constructed this graph with a high school in the center of the post high school and various secondary. And then another one that said continuous learning for the rest of your life in your career. No.
Good morning. I think we're going to go ahead and get started, and people will keep coming in from coffee hour. But welcome to the next chapter in our pilgrimage series that we've been journeying through together from January right up until before Easter. And so today we're really pleased to have Tom and Janet Robertshaw with us. And as a lot of you already know, they did a Camino in Spain. It was this past summer, fall?
Mid-September to end of October.
September to October of this past year. And so some of us followed their journeys on the map and online and all, but they're going to give us the full overview and lots of great pictures, and they've even brought some artifacts, a little show and tell up here, table at the front that you can engage with after. And so I just, without further ado, thank you so much, Janet and Tom, for sharing with us today.
Good morning. Thank you, Becky, for asking us to do this. We did hike the El Camino in September and all of October of last year, and it's what we call the adventure. So one of the things that Becky asked us to do is to talk about the why. The why. About 20 years ago, Lisa Beatty, many of you all know her, came to me and said, we should do the El Camino. I'd never heard of it. She goes, you stay in dormitory with strangers? I'm like, no. Then we had a gentleman come and talk to us at church about his journey on the Camino, and all I remember were these huge slides of blisters. And again, I went, no. But as we went through COVID, we started walking again, and we were throwing out ideas of what we wanted to do next. Tom had biked this with his son in 2017, and it just floated to the top, so we decided we would walk on the Camino. Becky asked to share spiritual things, and a lot of times when you go to do something, whether it's build a house in Mexico or walk the Camino, you know you're going to have some sort of spirituality, and it's never when you expect it. It was always lovely. So for you, the people that have taken EFM, there's a thing we always did called theological reflections, and it's getting to know God through experience. And I tell you, you did that daily, if not hourly, and it was really nice.
So there's tons of walking. We're walking for about 250 hours, and of course, talking to her, took some of the time. Talking to new people we met took some of the time, but probably a third of the time is you're walking quietly. And so I've been practicing contemplative prayer for a long time, and that's sort of when I slipped into it. Physically, we do a lot of suffering. There's no question about it. You'll see that in a few minutes. And so, all parts of a pilgrimage are suffering, and you do that. Big hills, long hot days, et cetera, et cetera. As you're walking along, there are tons of things to remind you to be spiritual. Little handmade crosses on fences, little shrines, old decrepit churches, old churches that have been restored, big cathedrals, the people you talk to. So there's plenty of opportunity if you're listening to be spiritual. So the routine also sort of forces you to be spiritual. You get up at 6, have breakfast, you pack your bag, you pack your backpack, you go to the bathroom, and you leave sometime probably before sunrise when we went. And then you're on the road for 4 to 6 hours. You get off the road, you have lunch real quick, you stretch, take a shower, maybe have some more food, do a little bit of reading, you go to bed. So this happened for 35 days in a row. And so that sort of routine forces out all of the everyday stuff that you normally get at home and helps you to be more focused. And of course, one of the great things about walking the Camino is meeting people, which we're going to talk about later, but it really highlights loving your neighbor, because you meet people from all over the world, and some of them you may not agree with, as John talked about this morning. So these are the El Camino routes. We walked the Francais route, which is from Saint Jean Pied de Port in southeast France, on the north side of the Pyrenees, and this is where half the people walk the Camino, walk this route. And our tour company said, when you get further down the road, you want to go on the Primitivo route, which is a little bitty small circle that you see there. The Primitivo route is where the king from Oviedo in the 9th century heard about the bones of St. James, and he walked from Oviedo, which is on the northern coast of Spain, to Santiago. So that's called the Primitivo route. It's very quiet. There's not tons of people. Another opportunity to be very, very spiritual. These are folks who have walked it. John and Ann Burris, William and Dolly King, who we talked to and got the name of their tour company, which we used. And then Richard and Dick and Jean Botsford, who we saw yesterday on the Jemison Trail, they actually walked all 480 miles here in Birmingham in 2021 as a virtual Camino, and then they walked the Portuguese route roughly the same time we did. And the Harberts are going to walk the last 100 kilometers in May. So history of the area, there's more history you can shake a stick at. 1,200,000 years ago it started. The Celts, or the Celts, whatever you want to call them, and the Basques are civilizations that grew up from early times. The Basques, still very proud, fierce group of people, still speak Basque in certain areas, especially in the hollows and on tops of mountains where civilization has yet to reach them. Of course, the Romans conquered all of Spain. The Muslims came in. They never conquered this part of northern Spain because of the fierce resistance that they got. Charlemagne from Germany came in to fight the Muslims. He got run out of Spain. The Knights Templar, a lot of the Knights Templar castles there with Knights Templar crosses all over the place. Napoleon came, and then Wellington came into Portugal, ran him out, and of course Franco won the Civil War. And everybody we talked to, he ruled this part of Spain with a really heavy hand. So the history of the El Camino is St. James preached in Iberia, as he called it. He was called back to Jerusalem, where he was beheaded, and his disciples took him, his remains, and a couple of other ones, sailed back to Portugal, marched up to Santiago, and made a very small crypt there, and buried him there. And it was sort of lost to knowledge for 800 years. And roughly somewhere in the 9th century, a shepherd found it and told everybody that he thinks, and it was inscribed, bones of St. James. Santiago means St. James in Spanish. And the king from Oviedo came down, as I said, and said, yep, these are the bones of St. James. Since then, those bones have been tested, carbon dated back to that period of time. And Athanasius, is that right, Becky? Athanasius? Yeah, Athanasius in the 400s or 500s, his remains were brought to Santiago and buried with St. James. So anyway, so over the next 400 years, people started going on this pilgrimage to Santiago to pay their respects. The UN and the EU have designated this route, or all these routes, as protected and super important, all that kind of stuff. And so before COVID, 325,000 people walked the Camino. We were there in a holy year. The holy year is actually 2021, but they extended it into 2022. And what that means is that Catholics, if you walk the Camino, walk the Camino 100 kilometers, visit cathedral, go to confession, and go to Mass, you're given a temporal, what's it called? Indulgence, which means you spend less time in purgatory. Okay, right. And one of our friends who is Catholic went, prayed for us, and came out and said, Janet, you're okay. Tom, you're in trouble. So training we did when we decided to go in oops, did I put training up? There we go. When we decided to go, we pulled training schedules off. The Camino is 480 miles long, and if you walk to Finisterre, it's another 65 miles. And so we started walking. And by the time we got ready to go, we'd walked 700 miles. We also had a trip out to Glacier National Park to learn how to walk up and down hills. We went through two types of training shoes, okay? This is the garb. And we went through two types of trail shoes before we found the ones that fit our feet, didn't hurt, didn't cause blisters. So that training and the fact we went through those two or three pairs of shoes kept us from having any. We had a couple of minor blisters, but nothing serious. This thing has a lot of hills. The first day out of St. John, there's a 4,000-foot climb. That's a lot, okay? And then there's another 3,000 or 4,000 or 2,000 or 3,000-foot climbs later on in the walk. As you see in the middle, that little flat thing kind of is called the meseta. It's just a rolling, not flat, but rolling, no big hills kind of thing. Goes on for 150 miles. So if you're going to go, don't walk on flats, but more walk on hills than on flats.
Okay, our schedule in America is very different than it is in Europe. They have lunch from 12 to 4. They have dinner starting at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Of course, we're going to bed at 8 o'clock at night. So food was an interesting thing, and you're burning calories, so you have to take calories in. You have to drink tons of water and make sure that you stay hydrated. Otherwise, you bonk, is what they say in the hiking world. We were able to find food at little, like 7-Elevens called Mercados, and if we were lucky, we found a supermercado that was like a nicer grocery store. But for the most part, you were fighting food. You know, we had our power bars with us and that kind of thing, but for the most part, we were, trying to find food. Lodging was the other thing. Is one of the reasons I was not going to stay in a dormitory. There's a lot of people that love the not knowing what they were going to do next or where they were going to stay. I am not wired that way. So you can stay in an albergue, which is either public or private. If it's public, you have to get there almost like at noon. People were leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning to get in line to get those. There are pensions, which are like boarding houses. We stayed in hotels that were arranged by our tour company, rated from 1 star to 5 stars. We were just glad we had a private bathroom and air conditioning. This is very typical. On the left, our 2 bags, we had a company that moved our bags forward for us, so all we had to do is carry a day pack. Those are our bags we were getting ready to check out. And the picture on the right is an example of the room that we stayed in that night. It was an old inn, and it had a beautiful garden out beside. The pub was right across the street. It was centrally located. It was wonderful.
That was a 5-star.
That was 4-star.
4-star. We stayed in a couple of 1-stars where we had to open the window. It smelled so bad. Okay.
Just once.
Yeah, not everything is that fancy. Compostela is a certificate that you participated. There's a copy of mine right here on the table for afterwards. And a Compostela is what you get when you get to Santiago. But what we didn't know this until we got there, actually, that if you don't walk, even though you've walked 300 miles and you skip the last 50 kilometers, you don't get it. So you have to walk the last 100 kilometers, which is in a little town called Sarria, and that's where most people, half the people that walk the French route, go to Sarria and walk the last 100 kilometers or 66 miles. So you get this Compostela. You can walk it, you can bicycle it, you can ride it on a horse, you can run it, and lots of people run it, and you can get a bus ride. You get a bus ride to the beginning of a section. You get a bus ride at the end of the section to your 5-star hotel if you want to. And we were at one hotel where this really nice bus showed up, and we had walked there in the rain. These people get off and go to this really nice hotel. So as long as you walk the last 66 kilometers, you get your Compostela. Quit. Go ahead.
So this is the scallop shell, and you'll see it on Tom's backpack. It's a little white shell that indicates that you're hiking the Camino. It was pretty obvious who was hiking the Camino and who wasn't. But back in the day, the early pilgrims used this for water and for food. And so they are also guide markers so that you will see them in all different shapes and sizes, gutter tops. And we actually ended up buying one of these. We're going to put it on our sidewalk. So that was a neat thing. The center side is where you go to get your passport. Your passport is what you have to have stamped to get your Compostela. And we ordered ours before we left, but because we didn't know what the line would be like. Again, we were at the end of the season, so some of the stores weren't open, some of the things were already closed, so we wouldn't have had any problem. The stamps are on the passport there, and this was the last stamp that we got in Santiago when we turned it in to get our Compostela. This is kind of what we looked like every day. This is the very first place that we stayed, that little inn, it did have air conditioning, but it was like a 1-star. But the back gate literally walked right onto the El Camino. So we had people walking past us, and I'm like, hurry up, Tom. He's doing his YouTube video, and I'm like going, we need to go. So this is one of the reasons I started walking again because of Jane Pounds. Jane's, as you know, she went to Lakeshore 6 days a week and walked. She had to get her 10,000 steps in, and she just shamed me into not exercising. When I turned 65, I got silver sneakers. We joined Lakeshore, but soon we realized that we loved hiking outside as well as we did. We went inside to Lakeshore on rainy days. And so when I went, I decided I would monogram their names on my skirt, and I talked to them all the time. So it was lovely, and it was fun to have them with me.
So as I said, the first day you walk up 4,000 feet, and this is a panorama from about 2,500 feet up, and it's very Smoky Mountain looking, kind of rounded mountains and beautiful. Of course, we picked two great days. We split it up. Our tour guide said, you're 75 years old, don't try to do it all in one day. We probably could have, but we probably would have suffered more than we needed to. So we walked up 3,000 feet, got a taxi back down to St. John, got a taxi the next morning back up over the hill and down to Roncesvalles. So the scenery was exquisite as we were walking along.
Much like hiking in the Smoky Mountains. It's absolutely beautiful. You're in the Pyrenees and everything that you see that goes with it. This is the first pub that we came along, and this was also an albergue, so people were stopping and standing in line trying to get their rooms. You can see I love this photo because everybody's wearing something different. The woman on the left is covered head to toe. She doesn't want to get any sun. Tom's got his knee braces, his shorts, and then the lady here is just basically in her capri and boots. And so everybody just, wore whatever they wanted to wear.
Just when you think of pretty hot stuff, you get passed by an 80-year-old lady with a cane, walking stick, and an umbrella, and someone carrying her bag. Humility is wonderful.
These are that lady was phenomenal because we got used to listening to the tinkle tinkle of bells around all the livestock, whether it was the black-faced sheep that they use mainly for meat and cheese. They are free range, so their wool is too hard to clean. But all of a sudden, that woman that was with her grandson, and we found out she was Italian, towards the end of the thing, we kept seeing her, she dragged that umbrella, and it just sounded like the little bells, and we're like going, we are getting bested by this woman that is just, just walking about.
So this is the hill down after the hill up, and the hill down was 15 to 20% for the first mile and a half, which those of you who have hiked, that is a steep hill. And luckily it was not raining. They tell you in the guidebook, do not go down this hill if it's raining. There's an alternate route which adds about 4 kilometers. But it was dry, and I convinced Janet to do it, and it is a very steep hill. The next picture on the right is a picture of a standard, what you just run across these bars. The guidebooks, there's two guidebooks here, one for the Portuguese route, for the French route. And the guidebook will tell you, hey, you know, there's a restaurant so-and-so at so-and-so kilometers. And this is very common. You sit down, take a little break, have a hot chocolate, talk to whoever's there, have a Coke, and just take a little bit of a break. So we must have stopped in 50 of these, at least 50 of them. Yeah, right. So this is a video with audio. This is a church outside of Zubiri, about 1,200 years old. The guy at the doorway there came by here 2009 on his pilgrimage, and now lives here and restoring the church, and has some unique art in it, and fascinating. So this church has no running water, no electricity, no heat except for a fireplace, and he's been living there for about 5 years. Put a roof on it, and then now is restoring the artwork on the inside. So you think about the kind of calling that guy had to do that. It had no roof; it was just walls when he walked by it in 2009.
And he wasn't the only person that was affected by his Camino. We ran into several people that changed their life completely and dropped out of their life and went to do something on the Camino for the pilgrims because they were interested in. These are called metal people. You'll see on any advertisement that you see for the Camino. If you look on the left, you see the wind turbines. If you look above the horse's head, there's a drone. This gentleman from overseas was flying this drone everywhere, and it was like a little annoying, but it was, it was just what it was. And then everybody, of course, poses with these metal people in all shapes and sizes. It was fun to help people and take pictures for other people. Oh, this is a Stonehenge-like formation, and the one on the right is very typical of a downhill. You think it looks easy because it's got, it's boarded up and it looks, but those rocks will just make you roll.
So we're going along, and we come to a road, and there's a lady in one of these little bitty, like, Mercedes teeny cars, and we're supposed to turn left and go on the road for a while, and she's telling people, don't go on the road, go up the hill. And the hill was like 25%, it was straight up. So you gotta go to the church. Well, the church on the left is St. Stephen's, which we didn't know at the time, but it was one of those aha kind of things. Been restored, beautiful, monk inside, gave us a blessing, stamped our passports. The belfry had been restored. It was just really one of those close, thin places. On the right are the bridges. There's tons of rivers we crossed. Most of the Roman bridges are gone. There's only one left. You'll see in a minute. And these bridges were all built in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century. This looks like another section, obviously. And down at the bottom, there's the remains of a bridge that was built 2,000 years ago. Pretty amazing, actually. You can see that on the other side of the ravine here is another part of the road. So there was a bridge that went across that is no longer there. Well, it actually is there. I just couldn't see it. This is the only Roman bridge that's left. There was about 50, 60 miles of the actual Roman road that was built when the Romans lived here. This is a sort of a sample of the artwork. Every village had these painted tiles or mosaics or paintings or statues, remembrances of people, so they're another opportunity for having a little bit of spiritual time when you see this stuff, when you watch, oh my, look at that, that's incredible stuff. On the right, we're still in the mountainous area. It had rained the night before, not on us, thank goodness. It had stopped in the morning, and just gorgeous kind of clouds and scenery as we're walking along.
This is another example. You think from a distance, it looks like it's a little shop, and you're going to get a little treat, like a candy bar or an ice cream, but it's not. It's a flat cinder block wall that they have painted a mural on of this cute little couple, and you just kept walking.
6:44 in the morning, as you can see, and we're out looking for a breakfast place, but here in Laguna, they don't open until 8:30, 9 o'clock. So we got to pay hotel prices for breakfast. the first hotel we stayed in, and we didn't get breakfast as part of the room rate. It's about 55 degrees. Looks like the rain chances are very slim today, which is nice. Thursday's looking pretty good for hard rain.
Tom did these videos, sidebar, Tom did these videos, and at the beginning he was very breathy in all of his talking. And so we finally realized after listening to him, he kind of had to start talking a little better. But these are beehives. It's where they're in all of the little fields. It's for the people that are working with the livestock to go during inclement weather or to just get out of the sun on a regular day. But they are so fun to come across.
So we're getting close to the Meseta, and we're there, and now it's in early October. And if you've seen The Way, which is the movie 10 years ago, it was filmed about the same time, big hay bales, which we saw thousands of, okay? So this was a scene that you saw most of the time walking along. If you notice, there are people walking down the road, and then they turn left about halfway up and start walking up that dirt road.
These were little happies along the way that people would just stop and make hearts, or the person went out in the stream and made the rock tower. The one I love the most is that field. If you look in the back, it's a field of dying sunflowers, but somebody took the time to pluck out a little happy face.
So this is walking into Atapuerco. Atapuerco is a town next to where some of the cave drawings from France are there. If you speak Spanish, because they don't do it in English, and can schedule a tour, which you have to do way ahead of time, you can stay in this town and go to the tour of where those cave drawings are in Atapuerca. And they date the cave drawings, to 800,000 years ago. So lots of history. So this is Burgos. Burgos is just before the Meseta. We happened to arrive on a festival. We saw a lot of festivals. The Spanish like to have festivals. I mean, bull festivals and this saint and that saint. But anyway, so we're in Burgos, and it's the El Cid Festival, and it's kind of like a Renaissance fair. And this cathedral is the third largest in Spain. If you see at the bottom, all those folks are dressed up in El Cid dress going to church. El Cid was a famous warrior in Spain who fought against the Muslims. So the Muslims bought him away from the Spaniards. He became a mercenary and fought for the Spanish for 3 or 4 years. And then enough people got together, put enough gold in a bucket to buy him back, and he fought again for the Spanish.
This is the garb that the early pilgrims wore, and you saw it depicted in statues. This is a hotel that we went into, and that was in the lobby. This was a country inn that we also went into that they have them shown there. This would be what I would have loved to walk on the whole time. No bears, no snakes, no cougars, no mountain lions, but alas, it wasn't like that, but it was fun to come across when it was like this.
So we had plenty of these. This is a sunrise. We saw maybe 3 or 4 sunsets. We were already in bed when the sun set, but the sunrises were exquisite. They were just gorgeous. This is in Astorga. Astorga was a Roman mining town, lots of gold and silver in Astorga. You can see the Roman wall down in the bottom right-hand corner. That building you see is the bishop's residence and was designed and built by Gaudi, who was a very famous Spanish architect who designed the cathedral in Barcelona. We get our word Gaudi from his last name because the stuff he built was very unique and wild for the time when he designed and built his buildings. This is a corn crib. We saw thousands of these. This is where the local farmers would put corn for their livestock, not for like silage and stuff like you'd see in a big silo. Saw those too, but this is where they put their corn to feed their livestock during the wintertime. This is a picture of the Meseta. I tried to get a little artistic, but anyway, the Meseta, like I said, is at 3,000 to 4,000 feet. It does get rain. You go down to Madrid, they get much, much less rain. And so this is all agricultural, and you're walking along and all you see are just fields for as far as you can see and no real big mountains. We got a little bored with it, Some of the people we walked with loved it. So it just all depends on your state of mind and what sort of triggers your spiritual kind of thoughts.
The center slide shows the Cruz de Ferro. On the top of that large pole, there is a cross. And the tradition is to take, have your friends write on a rock before you go, and you carry those rocks with you. When you get there, you throw the rocks on there. It's something to do with sin and the forgiving of sin. However, about half a mile away, I told Tom, I said, I want to turn around and get my rocks. I miss my people. So we both threw our rocks on there and had our little rock throwing ceremony. Okay, this is my favorite slide. I'm a vegetarian, so it's very difficult. It wasn't until we were in our last hotel that the waiter goes, you can't be a vegetarian in Spain. They eat ham, they eat every kind of meat possible, but I finally found a restaurant that could make a grilled cheese sandwich and french fries, and y'all that know me, that's my favorite thing. So there I am. See, George, I did wear this on the Camino. They said, try the hot chocolate. Their hot chocolate is like fondue. It's like dipping sauce, so it's delicious, but very different than ours. This is an almond cake that you will see in every shop, store, gas station. I mean, it is the claim to fame for the area. I never had a bite. I think Tom probably did, but you can buy the mixes, you can buy the cakes, and that's the cross of St. James that's on the cake.
The unique features of Lugo is the only place in the world that has a undamaged Roman wall. It is 2.5 kilometers all the way around, with numerous gates, and it's pretty impressive. Been here for 1900 years. The slide on the right is a chariot ramp to get chariots up on top of the wall. What's not shown is they had a 2-story wooden structure where the Roman soldiers went up when they were being attacked so they could throw spears and arrows and rocks and hot oil and all that stuff on the people that were attacking them. Leaving Lugo, there was a bridge across the river, and there was a centurion there. We just couldn't help but take a picture with him. So this is another sunrise in the morning, and we had about 80, 90, 100 miles of walking next to a road on these dirt gravel paths. It's not all quaint forest trails. Some of it is road walking.
These were guide markers. If you didn't follow the shell, you had to look for an arrow. Sometimes it was finding Waldo, because some towns really didn't pay much attention to repainting that yellow arrow. Some people put out banners for us, so either it was on the ground, you just had to look for it. So we got lost about 3 times. People whistled us back, and we had started doing the same to other pilgrims.
One of the things, if you're a backpacker, is called trail magic. You're walking along and there's somebody there giving out food. This is not in the guidebook, and they're just, when you come across one of these things, it's just, oh, cool. So we get to Santiago, we take our picture, take our picture in front of the cathedral, which everybody does. When you enter the last 80, 90, 100 miles, it's Galatia. We'd already had 3 days of rain before getting here. It rained on us as we were walking into the Santiago.
We have now gone to the office, turned in our passport, and they scrutinized that passport. It probably took them 5 minutes to look through that thing to make sure you had the proper stamps. And then off we walked with our Compostela in our you saw those blue things all over Santiago.
So this is the altar at the cathedral in Santiago, and the thing on the right is a reliquary, which is below the altar, which contains the remains of St. James, Anastasius, and some other saint that they brought there to reside with St. James in the reliquary.
This is back in the day when pilgrims, they kept walking past Santiago and they went on to Finisterre. There they took off their clothes, burned them, because as you can imagine, and then they redressed and walked home. Now, so this is our 000 kilometer markers. And we finally got smart and watched these people that had these ponchos. Our ponchos literally blew off of us. The snaps just went poop, 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 and they'd go over your head because it's very windy, very rainy. And we finally found those ponchos and we're like, yay!
So these are just some of the friends we met. The people on the left are from Tucson. On the right-hand side, the guy on the left is a retired sheep veterinarian from New Zealand. The guy on the right is a radiologist from Louisville who now lives in Vero Beach. We're going to go visit him in about 2 weeks. This guy is from Canberra, Australia, and he's in the Rotary in Canberra, and he had a Rotary pin in the back of his pack. How we got talking, we saw them in the beginning, didn't see him for 3 or 4 weeks, and we're in Santiago walking along, and somebody says, "Tom!" We look up, and Linda, his wife, is in the second story. She'd come out, she wasn't staying there, came out, she was staying behind that house, came out, was looking at all the people in the road, and we happened along at the same time. It was in a VRBO. So that kind of stuff happens a lot, and it's just chillingly cool. And now we went to a Pilgrim's Mass. The Butafumero is that big thing in the middle. The priest said, "Don't take pictures." Everybody's taking pictures. Okay. And that thing weighs 155 pounds. It's bronze, silver plated. It was solid silver, but Napoleon stole it when he came through Santiago when he was in Spain. So this is, we have little cards on the table. This is the resources that we used. American Pilgrims is an organization. They have a chapter in Atlanta. We used Iberian Adventures as our tour place. We, when I had a stomach flu and I had a shin splint, they got us new hotel rooms. When we didn't, a couple times we said, "We're done, get us a taxi," that kind of thing. YouTube channel, JJ and Gito, if you want to follow this thing. Guidebooks is a couple of samples here, and there are all kinds of podcasts. Questions?
Could you go back to the previous slide? Thank you.
There's a card right here with all that data on it. Yes, ma'am. Yep, sure is. Other questions? Huh? We,
Good question, George.
Repeat the question, because I didn't get the mic to him. So
yeah,
people at home can...
where did we go to the bathroom?
Yes.
In all seriousness, that's one of the reasons when Lisa Beatty told me years ago, that's my first question, where are you going to go to the bathroom? Well, obviously people go to the bathroom wherever they need to go. And so it was most interesting, and you just, either you found a restaurant or you found a bush.
Other questions? Let me bring the mic to you if you have one.
Yeah, if you watch the movie The Way, there are 4 guys and 1 woman walking, and they stood so she could go to the bathroom behind them. But if you're going to go, please take a trowel with you so you can bury your toilet paper. On our YouTube, I show pictures of this row of bushes with tons of toilet paper on the ground. So take it with you, you know. Other questions?
Good question, George.
Has anyone in here also been on a Camino who would like to share a memory or something that this brought up for you? Or now we have lots of people who want to sign up to go. Hold on. You want to go? Yes. Chris, did you?
I was just going to say, we didn't hike the trail, but we were at the church. And the most amazing thing to me was when people would end their trail ride and they would just throw themselves down on that huge plaza and just be so grateful. And it was spiritual for people watching to see how grateful they were to have completed their journey.
We met a guy from Wales whose name was Charles in Welsh, big, 6'4". He lost all of his toenails, had more blisters than I could count, and we saw him coming away from the cathedral. Hadn't seen him for 3 weeks. He was in Santiago, walking away from the cathedral, crying.
Well, he was one of the people that we didn't know would make it. There were two people. Ann, we met Ann. She got injured and she had to go to the hospital. And so when we walked into the plaza and we were walking away, we ran into, his name's Charlie, but I can't even say it in his language. And he's about this big. He's a teddy bear. And he picked Tom up off the ground and just turned him around. It was wild. And there, right behind him was Ann. And so I wanted to do cartwheels or back handsprings when I got into the plaza. But when I saw them, I just wanted to cry because I was so excited they made it because we weren't sure they would.
Yeah, there's no question that if you're Catholic, this has probably a lot more meaning than us Episcopalians, because they're very, very, very dedicated to the whole pilgrimage thought process. And you're right, people laying down. I saw two people who were on their knees all the way to the cathedral, maybe the last 300 or 400 yards. Yeah, so saw two people carrying a cross, dragging a cross, maybe 30, 40 kilometers out, carried the cross all the way to the cathedral.
I'm curious, I know you all both do a lot of hiking in very different contexts here in Alabama and the Appalachian Trail and all, but how did hiking the Camino, how was it the same and how is it different than the typical type of hiking you do more that's kind of in mountains and in forests and things?
Well, I'll address the non-backpacking portion of that question because I don't backpack anymore. We trained a lot, so there were places when you were on the Camino, you went, oh, this is just Oak Mountain on the White Trail, and this is that kind of hill, and so it was very comforting to, oh, this is Jemison, oh, this is going to be an easy day, so you associated with where you were training. Now, for he that backpacks with Mr. Mitchell over here.
Yeah, there's no question, it's almost the same. The first hill.
Physical experience is sort of this very much
I
the
mean,
same.
if you go out to Oak Mountain and do those hills, or you go over to North Georgia and do those hills, I mean, it's very, very, very the same. And luckily, we didn't have to ford any streams because they all had bridges. But other than that, it's very, very similar, right?
So tell us, I mean, you talked about the spiritual component going through, but looking back on it now, what would you say would be kind of what you took away most on a spiritual level from doing the Camino?
Well, I don't know about most, but one of the funny things about being on Camino is you meet these people and you don't think you're ever going to see them again. So they tell you things about their lives and share things with you that one woman was walking because her kids had left, she's staunch Catholic, her kids had left the Catholic Church and she was walking for their penance. And you're just like, okay. And so we had a lot of these people that talked to us about, and so you shared back with them. And so it just got to be a real, it was a real spiritual journey that you just felt that you were glad to be a part of.
Yeah, one of the things that I said before is that loving your neighbor became real. You have to get rid of, well, maybe they don't want to talk to us. So we would go in and we'd find somebody that was by themselves, or maybe one couple at a four-top. We'd just go sit down and start talking to them, and we never got told go away. Even after I started talking, they didn't tell me to go away, which is remarkable. Okay, but so that whole barrier of protecting and being in our bubble was just gone, and that sort of really, we look back on it. I look at that. We really, like John talked about in his sermon today, okay? Exactly the same thing is we need to stop thinking about who you are, what you think, and just love you.
Nice, thank you. Any other questions or comments that have occurred to you all?
This was not that hard if you train. Honest to God, it was not that hard if you train. If you want to walk the last 66 miles from Sarria to get to Compostela, you could train for 6 weeks, 3 or 4 times a week, and not kill yourself doing it, and you could probably walk the 66 miles.
And I'll be very honest, when we came to talk about doing this, spirituality wasn't our first choice. I mean, it wasn't the reason we did it. It was something we could do together. It was something that we could do that was safe, and we could have lodging, and it just turned into be one of these things that we probably will go back and do another something or another.
Portugal.
So,
We're going to go to Portugal.
Hold
Yes,
on
sir.
a second.
Wait a minute.
Let me get you.
How many miles did you average a day?
12 to 15, our shortest day was 7 miles walking up the hill. Longest day was 16 miles when I got lost.
And how much
Yeah.
time would you be spent walking that distance on average?
We averaged, okay, on standard terrain, mild up and downs, about 2 miles an hour. Going up the hill, we averaged 1.5 miles an hour. Pure flat, we're at about 2.5.
Thank you.
Yes, George?
George is not allowed to ask a question. That.
Yes, George?
How often did you use Far Out?
Say again?
How
How
often did you use Far Out?
Far Out is a app, a hiking app on your phone. Used it like 3 or 4 times when we got lost. Yeah, and it was pretty accurate. The problem with Far Out is that all it has is the main route. Doesn't have any of the branches. It doesn't have the Primotiva route, and so, Far Out's good if you're only on the French route or the Portuguese route.
I equate getting that Compostela with like a marathon run or getting a T-shirt. It's not, it's not something you have to. When we were on the Primitiva, we stayed at this inn that an architect had stopped, rebuilt it, and this young couple talk about changing their lives. She was from Poland, married a German gentleman. They had 2 children. All of a sudden, they decided they wanted to do something to be on the Camino, and they bought the inn. And we would have stayed there the rest of the time. It was a town of about 100 people maybe, and it was just beautiful. It was lovely, and it made us feel very welcome. But we were going to get that Compostela, so.
And when we got there, she cooked us, what was that soup?
Oh, butternut squash.
Butternut squash soup, and it was just exquisite. I said, man, it's great. Well, I use my Thermomix. Anybody heard of a Thermomix? It is a German food processor, and we're going to Mobile to get a demonstration because it's Fairhope, that's right. Because oh man, it was incredible food. Yeah.
That's our unofficial sponsor for today. So, thank you. I think that we'll save some time for if people want to come up and see the artifacts and ask individual questions. But while I have you all here, just to promote, on Wednesday, our 3rd of our Lenten workshops, it'll be right after the parish dinner. So come join us for dinner and stay. Chris and Lois and Lanier will be leading our Lenten workshop this week. So prepare to come and get a plant into some soil and to reflect on sort of the spiritual dimensions of gardening with us. And then a week from today, we have our guest preacher and our Sunday Forum guest next week as well, Brother Jim Woodrum from the Society of St. John the Evangelist in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Is a place a lot of people go on pilgrimage, so he's going to tell us about what they have to offer if you want to do your own spiritual retreat there. John and a number of other priests I know and lay people regularly go there on retreat, so I hope you'll come back next Sunday for that and come see the show and tell and the artifacts up here. So thanks for coming. Thank you, Tom and Janet.